Okay, friends, hi, it's Angie again. I'm going to continue with the four-part series of the genealogy of the Power clan. And I'm going to just deliberately show you how to go to my blog, because some people go to it and they just get one page and then they don't realize that there's all sorts available there. So I'll show people just simply how to get to the blog. So here you go, I've got it on, so angeluscaches.org. There we go. And then you've got a search engine on the top right. So I'm going to write in Poetry in Motion. There it is. P-O-E-R, Poetry in Motion, yep. And press search. And there we go. It takes you straight to it. And I'll just show you the tabs. There's subscribe, which entails you give your email address and then you do a confirmation email. Monthly financial partners. You can do that here, although not with this PayPal. The trolls sabotaged that PayPal, but PayPal allowed me to open a new one. So I need to, if I could get somebody to help me to remove this connection, wouldn't you just know it? And I really should put, hello? Oh, hi. Okay, sorry about that. So we go back to screen share. That was somebody I was waiting to hear from. So yeah, so here it is, and we've written Poetry in Motion in the search box. If anybody can help me take this PayPal link off and put the correct one on, that would be great. And we'll go on to part 2. And make sure I've still got it on large. Yeah, I suppose that's large enough to read. Perhaps we'll go up even one more. And here we go. By Mary Frances. I think it's Frances Mary, actually. There are references to the Poer family in the Pleas of the Devon Heir, dealing with civil litigation of 1238. My lovely daughter, my niece, my nephew, my wedding photo. Hugh Le Poer was listed as one who pledged for the fine of Walter Lucenay and Ralph de Haps in the case of the abduction of Robert de Sickerville de Stracville in Witheridge 100. Stephen Le Poer was held in default for failing to appear for the first day as jury. We mentioned that in the last one, in Braunton 100. Just clean my glasses. He held land valued at one knight's fee in Churchill, East Down, in the barony of Dartington. In 1238, Roger Le Poer was an elector for Sancta Maria Ottery 100, held by the dean and chapter of Rouen Cathedral. In 1242-43, he was a juror in the Budley 100 and a tenant at Yethermeton, at Blakeborough, and at Rapling. Hey. I'm not great with these names. A fiefy of John de Courtenay, Earl of Devon. The Blakeborough property was in the honour of Plimpton, held of the Sheriff of Devon. There is doubtless some connection with William Le Poer's service in this position in 1222 to 1224. At some date between 1242 and 1254, a Philip Le Poer was a witness to a gift to the Priory of the Church of Ashbury, Devon. It seems likely that William Le Poer, Sheriff of Devon in 1222 to 1224, was the father of Roger and perhaps also of Stephen and Hugh Le Poer, since there's no evidence of a pre-existing Devonshire Le Poer line to provide alternatives. Thus, the genealogy of Cecily Poer, who married John Duke's son William, was from William Le Poer or Le Poyer, Sheriff of Devon in 1222 to 1224, to Roger, elector for Ottery St Mary in 1238, and a juror in 1242, through several generations to John Poer, fiefy of the Dowager of the Earl of Devon in 1377, to his son Roger, the father of Cecily. Power researchers, now there's some links here, which, so for those of you that are real researchers, you might want to look at the written version of these notes, either on my blog, as I just showed you, or in my Facebook notes. So it says Power Researchers by Kenneth Roy Power, and there's a link there. It says Power Genealogy.home.comcast.net index. And then it says Clarice Tucker's rootsweb.com tree. Kia Oral, New Zealand Power Research. Power Weiser, Samuel Vaughan Genealogy. Richard Power, yeah, I've seen some of Richard's stuff. Warren Power's genealogy.com site. Power's Gen Forum, Power Gen Forum, Power Message Board, Power's Message Board. And then it says purpose. The purpose of this website is to display the information I've gathered during the research of my particular branch of the family's power, my particular Power family branch. This site will focus exclusively upon the Power's surname and its variants pertaining to my research. At the present time, I'm at an impasse regarding the parents of Michael Powers, who was born in 1727 in Ireland and died in 1807 in New London, Connecticut. During the course of this project, I will add information for the various as yet non-related Power family lines for which I've gathered information in order to attempt to further my own research. Eventually, most of the Power family trees have to come together, and it's up to us as researchers to share our information in order to find the missing link that may reveal our hidden ancestors. It's only with the help of fellow researchers like Clarice Tucker, this is Frances Mary speaking, that I've been able to accumulate the information I have. If you have information that could aid me in my research, by all means contact me via email. And this is family trees and documents. The links below are to trees in my rootsweb.com file offsite that are mainly from the Connecticut and Rhode Island areas. Some, however, are early historical Power family trees from England and Ireland. Many of the people have extensive notes that contain all my research findings, including land transactions, wills, and obituaries. Feel free to explore them thoroughly, and if you have information to add, please let me know. Rootsweb.com specifies 1930 as the year after which people without death dates are considered living. These people will be marked with living as a first name in the online file. If you desire more information about one of these individuals, email me. Several of the documents below require the use of Adobe Acrobat Reader. Historical Power Origin or Power's Origin Trees. Sir Bartholomew de la Poer, Descendant Chart. My Direct Family Line. Michael Powers and Hannah Fox. Michael Powers' Origin Theory document. Kenneth Powers and Kendra McCombie. Direct Family Line document scans and photographs. Clarice Powers Tucker, a fellow researcher. Other Connecticut and Rhode Island lines, Joshua Powers, Joshua and Abigail Powers. Descendant chart, John and Sarah Power. Dr. Peter Powers and Mary Allworth. Descendant chart, Franklin H. Powers and Eunice Coleman. Descendant chart, Thomas Powers and Hannah Morgan. Descendant chart, Nicholas Power and Jane. Descendant chart. History. This section of this site is dedicated to the historical aspects of the Powers family name and its variants. It includes links to data accumulated from many sources. The Powers surname origins, Sir Piers Power of Currickmore, a knight. The Battle Abbey roll, 18th century notes on the Le Poer family, Powers family mottos, the Country House database, Power, DNA and genealogy. This section of the site is dedicated to links and information concerning DNA and its use in the genealogical studies of the Powers surname. DNA article from gencircles.com. R1b haplogroup information. R1b haplogroup and subclades DNA project. The Powers et al. DNA project. Ireland Heritage DNA project. And Family Tree DNA. Gravestone photo galleries. This area of the site contains photos of various Powers family gravestone photos organised by cemetery. If I found historical information about the graveyard, it will be given in this section as well. Ye Ancientest Burial Place, New London, Connecticut. History of Ye Ancientest Burial Place. Bond Cemetery, Greenbush, Warren, Illinois. Fairview Cemetery, Mildred Allen, Kansas. History of Fairview Cemetery. The following links are to Powers family maps that I've either found on the internet or created. Michael Powers and Hannah Fox lines. My Direct Powers family migration. Butler County, Ohio. Greenbush, Warren County, Illinois. Anderson County, Kansas. Allen County, Kansas. Sir Bartholomew de la Poer lines. Locations of famous Powers houses. Surname distribution maps. Powers surname distribution map USA. Power surname distribution map USA. Links. The following links are to other sites of mine or the research of others. There are also links to some excellent research sites. My other sites, myrootsweb.com file with allied lines, the Powers Home Brewery, fellow Powers family researchers, Clarice Tucker's rootsweb.com tree, Kia ora, New Zealand Power Research, Power, Vice, Samuel, Vaughan, Genealogy, Richard Power, Warren Powers, genealogy.com site, Powers Gen Forum, Power Gen Forum, Power Message Board, and Powers Message Board. Research sites, the Waterford County Library in Ireland, Connecticut US Gen website, Rhode Island US Gen website, Warren County, Illinois research site. And there's links to these on this article. The Battle Abbey role. The role of Battle Abbey comprises the names of the known principal Norman knights who accompanied William across the English Channel to engage Harold II and the English Saxons at the Battle of Hastings on the 14th of October 1066. The following is an excerpt found under the surname of Power. Poer, or Poer, descended from the lords of Poer in Brittany. A branch settled in 1066 in Devon with Alured de Mayenne, and in 1165, Ranulph Poer held 3 fees of his barony, Liber Niger. Bartholomew Poer, at the same time, was Lord of Blackburgh, Devon, and father to Robert Poer, who settled in Ireland. The Norman people, according to the peerages, it was, however, Roger, not Robert de la Poer, who went with Earl Strongbow to the conquest of Ireland and received vast grants of territory. Right. So it says Robert Poer, but Mary Frances research, or Frances Mary Frances, I must find the messages and remind myself, says no, it was Roger, not Robert. Quote, it may be said without offence, writes Giraldus Cambrensis, that there was not a man who did more valiant acts than Roger le Poer, who, although he were young and beardless, yet showed himself a lusty, valiant, and courageous gentleman who grew into such good credit that he had the government of the country about Leeklin, as also in Ossory, where he was traitorously killed, on whose slaughter a conspiracy was formed among the Irish to destroy the English, and many castles were destroyed. So the Irish, it looks like they destroyed many castles in vengeance for the murder of Roger Poer. Strange. Anyway, the Poer estates were of magnificent dimensions, extending from near Youghal, wow, to Cork Harbour. We were going to settle in Youghal. My father had land there, but the council bought it off him for housing at a huge profit. We ended up in Meath. From Youghal to Cork Harbour, where the celebrated headland guarding its entrance still bears the name of Poer Head. The southern transept of Cloyne Cathedral is also called after them, Poer Isle. Among the most ancient writs to be found in the Irish Rolls Office are those summoning Nicholas le Poer, Baron of Waterford, to Parliament in 1378, 1381 and 1383. That's my father's name, Nicholas. His great-grandson Richard was recreated in 1535 Lord le Poer, Baron of Carrickmore, and was the father of John, Lord le Poer, described by Sir Henry Sidney in his account of Munster to the Lords of the Council in 1575 as living, quote, in show far more honourably and plentifully than any other of his calling that lives in this province. The day I departed from Waterford, I lodged that night at Carrickmore, the house that the Lord Power is Baron of, where I was so used, and with such plenty and good order entertained, as adding to it the quiet of all the country adjoining by the people called Power Country, for that surname has been since the beginning of Englishmen's planting inhabitants there. It may be well compared with the best ordered country in the English Pale. It was the boast of the family that, quote, though dwelling in a country continuously disturbed by convulsions and civil wars, they never once suffered forfeiture or engaged in rebellion against the crown. And for this reason, they received rough treatment at the hands of Cromwell. Two of their castles, Kilmeaden-on-Suir and Don Isle, an almost impregnable fortress built on a steep crag on the sea coast, were captured and demolished. The Lord of Kilmeaden was strung up without either trial or shrift on one of his own trees, and the heiress of Don Isle, after a splendid defence, was betrayed by one of her own gunners and perished miserably in the flames that consumed her castle. Carrickmore, their most ancient possession, was saved by the quick-witted daughter of the Baron, who, seeing her father resolved to defend the place to the last extremity, contrived to lock him up in his own dungeon, and throwing open the castle gates, went out to meet Cromwell with its keys in her hand. When questioned about her father, she explained that he was unwillingly absent and that she had taken upon herself to surrender unreservedly to the Parliament, and therefore claimed as her due confirmation of the property and his protection at all times. Cromwell, thus baffled, was constrained to sign the proper letters. Wow, so by surrendering, she saved the home and her father's life. It must have been John Lord le Poer who was thus left chafing in confinement while his daughter made terms with the invader. His son Richard was created in 1673 Viscount de C and Earl of Tyrone, but both titles expired with the third Earl in 1704. His only daughter Catherine, in her own right Baroness le Poer, married Sir Marcus Beresford, who received the earldom of Tyrone in 1746 and was the father of the first Marquess of Waterford. The mother of Sir Marcus, Nicola Hamilton, the youngest of three co-heiresses of Lord Glenorley, was the heroine of a celebrated ghost story, of which the first perfectly authentic account was published in 1880 by the Reverend B.W. Saville, one of her descendants. On the morning of the 15th of October 1693, a date faithfully treasured up in the family, she came down to breakfast, deadly pale and in evident distress of mind, with a black ribbon bound round her wrist, which from that day forwards she never removed. Her husband anxiously inquired what was the matter, but she entreated him with the greatest earnestness to ask no questions. During the day, a messenger brought them word that their neighbour John, 2nd Earl of Tyrone, had died suddenly in the night. He was Lady Beresford's kinsman, and in early life, having both been left orphans under the care of the same guardian, they had seen a great deal of each other. She was deeply affected, and as her husband was endeavouring to console her, she suddenly turned to him in the midst of her grief and told him she was expecting another child, and that it would be a son, her first son, for as yet she had only daughters. The prophecy came true, and in due time Sir Tristram was made happy by the birth of an heir. He died 7 years afterwards, in 1701, and Lady Beresford remarried General Jorge, by whom she had 4 other children. In 1713, a large party assembled at her house to celebrate her 18th birthday, for which she'd made great preparation and evinced a degree of solicitude that seemed altogether unaccountable. She appeared among her guests in the highest spirits, declaring that she felt uncommonly happy in keeping her 48th birthday. It says 18th, I think she meant 48th. An old clergyman, who was one of the company, here unfortunately interposed. "No, my lady," he said, "you are mistaken. Your mother, Lady Glenorley, and I used to have many disputes concerning your age, and today I'm able to prove myself in the right, for last week I happened to go to the parish where you were born, and took the opportunity of searching the register. You are only 47 today." Lady Beresford turned ghastly pale and cried, "Then you have signed my death warrant." She at once withdrew to her own room, and sending for her young son, Sir Marcus, and one other intimate friend, for the first time in her life, told the story of Lord Tyrone's apparition to her on the night of his death 20 years before, with all its now well-known details. She awoke to find him sitting by her bedside, and was so thoroughly convinced she was dreaming that nothing short of the touch of his hand would serve to assure her of his actual presence. As his fingers closed around her wrist, every nerve and sinew shrank, and though ice cold, they left an indelible mark, as if from the grip of red-hot pincers. He bade her hide it from every living soul as long as she herself should live. Then, rising from his seat, he walked across to a bureau that stood on the other side of the room and laid his hands upon it. "Look at this," he said. "When the morning comes, you will find another proof." And there again she saw the impress of a man's hand, deeply burnt into the wood. He told her that she would bear a son and die on her 47th birthday. "I thought," added she, "that I had outlived the fatal date. But I bless God that I'm no longer afraid of death. I have learned the truth of revealed religion and can depart in peace." Then she desired her friend, as soon as she was dead, to take the ribbon from her arm and to show it to her son. She died within the hour, and her wrist was found exactly as she described it, with every nerve and sinew shrunk and withered away, and branded by the clasp of 4 fiery fingers. The bureau, retaining the scorched print marks of a man's hand, is still in existence in Lord Clanwilliam's house of Gill Hall in the County Down, and Lady Beresford's portrait, painted with the mysterious black ribbon round her wrist, is to be seen at Curraghmore. The name of Poer, or Power, is widely spread in Ireland. The Poers of Belleville Park near Cappoquin, the Powers of Afane and Mount Rivers, In the same vicinity, the powers of Gertine, midway between Clonmel and Carrick, are the chief representatives of this honourable name in the county of Waterford. Sir Bernard Burke wrote that. Several branches remain seated in England. In Worcestershire, the Poers, held of the honour of Gloucester and affixed their name to Puritan power. Robert de Poer was 7 times Sheriff of Leicestershire under King John and held 5.5 knights' fees in the county. Richard de Poer occurs in the 100 Rolls of 7 Edward I as a landowner in Oxfordshire, where his descendants, quote, continued for many ages. Thomas Poer, a miner, the son of Sir Thomas Poer, died in 1407. His heiress was his sister Agnes Winslow Bullington and Plowley's Oxon. Jean Touchive le Poer held considerable property in Oxfordshire during the reign of John, and his descendant Sir Walter founded a house of charity dedicated to St. John at Oxford, after which, taking a journey to the Holy Land, he was absent for many years. That's what the knights used to do, isn't it? The college, believing him to be dead, ventured upon altering some of his statutes, which provided for the reception and entertainment of pilgrims. And when he at length returned, so changed with age and travel that none might know him, and knocked at the gate of his hospital, he found it closed against him. He asked for alms and was refused and turned away. But a poor scholar, compassionating his wan and weary looks, followed him out and put a piece of money into his hand. Then, drawing a ring off his finger, he asked the young man, a rather reluctant emissary, to take it to the warden, who instantly recognized it. "God's mercy," he cried, "it's the ring of our founder." Having thus announced his presence, Sir Walter lost no time in discharging the vials of his wrath upon the disobedient fraternity, whom he sentenced to instant expulsion, and only pardoned when they had made the most abject submission and most solemn promises of good conduct for the future. The restoration of the Fellows of St. John's is said to have given rise to the choir music in the open air. And that's a quote from Bullingdon and Plowley's, Oxfordshire. The Country House Database, additional information, power. The following information has been extracted from the Country House Database. It's a first attempt at listing country houses in the British Isles from the late medieval period to circa 1850. The link to their web page is here. I've also included some excerpts from the Parliamentary Gazette of Ireland of 1844, Waterford extracts, as well as any additional information I could find on the internet. County Cork, Glenmire, Core, Lotter Park, Rogers, Power, Roche, Maloney, Ware, Murphy, Beamish, 1801. Built by John Power in 1801, then owned by John Roche, John Maloney, William Ware, bought circa 1837 by J.J. Murphy, library added by John Roche, M. Bence Jones, A Guide to Irish Country Houses, London, 1988. Numerous lettings. Rogers family circa 1694, owned 1855 by Lieutenant Colonel North L. Beamish, FRS. In 1801, John Power built Lotter Park, a late Georgian house overlooking the River Lee at Glenmire. The architect is not known. The house was later owned by James Roche, J.R. of the Gentleman's Magazine, who added single-story wings, one containing a ballroom, the other a library in the 19th century. The house was successfully the home of John Maloney, William Ware, J.J. Murphy, Lieutenant Colonel N.L. Beamish, and Joseph Gubbins. M. Bence Jones, page 191. County Kilkenny, Sleeveruki, Bellevue House, Shiel Power, 1760 plus. Owned by Richard L. Shiel MP, bought by Patrick Power MP, M. Bence Jones, A Guide to Irish Country Houses, London, 1988. It was George Olger who gave Bellevue its name after he purchased an estate at Ballyhogue and built a mansion there in 1737. His son, also named George, was born at Bellevue and succeeded to the estates, was a Member of Parliament for County Wexford from 1768 until 1796. Wow, that's a long time. And afterwards he represented the city of Dublin until the Act of Union in 1801. Ogle was a poet, and during the 1798 rebellion, he commanded the Shelmalier infantry, who were commonly known as Ogle's Bloody Blues. Following his death on August 10th, 1814, Bellevue remained unoccupied for some time. The next owner of the estate was Anthony Cliff, who arrived in 1825. This family were Cromwellian settlers who held contemporary banking interests in New Ross, while the family seat was at Abbeybrownie near Gusseray. Cliff renovated Bellevue and most likely rebuilt the place. It's understood that Daniel Robertson was the architect responsible for modernising the house, which had a magnificent portico formed by 8 columns and approached by a capacious flight of the central block. Fine, boldly projecting wings extended on either side of the 2-storey house. Jane Cliff married the first Lord Carew of Castleborough and created a piece of personal history. Not only did she live to the great age of 103 years, but she also lived in 3 different centuries. Wow. In 1856, the Cliffs converted to Catholicism. That's interesting. Consequently, a private chapel was built adjacent to the mansion in 1859, the work of J.J. McCarthy, working to the design of Augustus Welby Pugin, 1812 to 1852. Anthony John Cliff married Lady Frances Power, widow of Sir John Talbot Power of Edermine, in 1904. He died on December 21st, 1921. Leaving 1,920 gross personal estate to his widow, who emigrated to London and died there in 1930. January the 28th, 1923, Bellevue House was reduced to smoke-begrimed walls and a roofless shell following a visit from Sinn Féin pyromaniacs. Yeah, a lot of stately homes owned by Protestants were burned, including the Napa estate, Loughrea estate locally. At the time, only an elderly caretaker and his wife were in residence. Lady Power and B.J. O'Flaherty, solicitors, Enniscorthy, trustees, claimed $24,451 for the malicious destruction of the mansion. The court was told that Bellevue contained 9 reception rooms and 8 bedrooms. The house was lighted by electricity, contained a heating chamber, and was generally fitted as a comfortable gentleman's residence. Mr. O'Flaherty told the court that he had acted for the Cliffs since 1887. There were 1,000 acres attached to the mansion, but 719 acres had been sold. Thomastown, Kilfane House. Bush Power, 1750 plus. Passed by marriage to the Power family early in the 19th century, rebuilt circa 1820, owned by Sir John Power, 1st Bart M. Bence Jones, A Guide to Irish Country Houses, London, 1988. County Tyrone, Cookstown, Killymoon Castle. I don't know what TYR stands for. Power Stewart, 1803. Originally owned by the Earls of Tyrone, rebuilt by William Stewart MP, designed by John Nash. That's interesting. He did a lot of the architect designs in Bath. Library, William Stewart died 1850. M. Bence Jones, A Guide to Irish Country Houses, London, 1988. J.B. Burke, Visitation, second series, 1855, 69-70, purchased by Lieutenant Colonel William Stewart after the old house burned, circa 1800. County Waterford, Cappoquin, Athane House. Great Rakes, Browning, Power, 1660 plus. Owned 17th century by Valentine Greatrakes. Cure of ills by stroking. Passed to Major Edmund Browning by marriage, and then to the Powers, Poer. Ruined. M. Bence Jones, A Guide to Irish Country Houses, London, 1988. Clashmore House, Power. Clashmore, this rings a bell from childhood, is a parish containing a village of the same name in the barony of Dussey within Drum, County Waterford, Munster. Length westward 4 miles, breadth from 3 furlongs to 2.5 miles area, 7,201 acres, 3 roads, 20 perches, or 3 roods, 20 perches, of which 1,932 acres, 3 roods, 4 perches, lie slightly detached to the southwest. In 1881, 3,700, population in 1881, 3,772. In 1841, 3,777. Houses, 558. Wow, the population didn't grow much. It lies along the left bank of the Blackwater and is traversed southward by the road from Clonmel to Yohol Ferry. Wow. About 1/2 of the land is good and 1/2 indifferent. The part near the river being arable valley ground, and the eastern part upland and mountainous, yet profitable for the feeding of black cattle. Clashmore House, the seat of Robert Power, Esquire, adjoins the village, is well situated near the Blackwater, a little above the influx of the Lickey, and is surrounded by a demesne, which long ago, I don't know how you say that word, was considerably improved. Demesne. The other seats are Balnamultna, Bayview, Rockview, and Ardsala. The village stands on the principal road of the parish, about 8 miles south-southeast of Aiglish, and 5 north-northeast of Youghal. Area, 29 acres. Population, 1831, 387. In 1841, 232. Houses, 34. The old abbey of Glasmore, the ruins of which still exist, is one of those which the herd of topographists, in defiance of all probability, assigned to a period several centuries before the Anglo-Norman conquest, or even before the serious degeneracy of early Culdeism. Archdale, 1. In his succinct notice of it, displays himself as almost the pink of twaddlers. Glasmore, quoth he, was a celebrated abbey in the Dussey near the river Blackwater, and was founded by Quintier at the command of Saint Macamoc of Leathermore, who had raised Quintier from the dead. That saint died on the 13th of March, AD 655. The actual abbey, though the record of its true origin seems lost, was no doubt founded at least about 500 years later than Archdale pretends, and its possessions were, after the dissolution, given in fee farm to Sir Walter Raleigh. A dispensary in the village is within the Dungarvan Poor Law Union and serves for a population, of 9,853. And in 1839, it expended £115 and administered to 1,163 patients. About a mile northeast of the village stands the hamlet of Cross, at which some fairs are held. This parish is a vicarage and a separate benefice in the Diocese of Lismore. Visceral tithe composition, £191, 8 shillings and 4 pence. Glebe, £10. Gross income, £201, 8 shillings and 4pence. Net, £129, 1 shilling and a penny. Patron, the diocesan. The vicar holds also the prebend of Clashmore in Lismore Cathedral. The rectorial tithes are compounded for £382, 16 shillings and 8pence, and are impropriated in the Duke of Devonshire. The church was built in 1818 by means of a gift of £830, 15 shillings and 4.5pence from the late Board of First Fruits. These are all, it's fascinating because tithes and first fruits is all biblical. These are the biblical feasts that Jesus would have recognized, and the kingdom principles of finances, although tax paying is not really looked kindly on in the Bible, but tithes and offerings are. Sittings 200, attendance 25. The Roman Catholic Chapel has an attendance at 2 services of respectively 200 and 700. And in the Roman Catholic arrangement is united in the Chapel of Kinsalabeg. In 1834, the Protestants amounted to 42 and the Roman Catholics to 3,886. And 3 daily schools, one of which was aided with £5 a year and a house from Mrs. Poer, had on their books 169 boys and 811 girls. So maybe the school was mixed there. Kilwat Garden Morris, O'Shea, Power 1680 plus. In Power ownership in the 19th century, enlarged circa 1850, M. Bence Jones' Guide to Irish Country Houses, Kilbarry Meaden Parish, formerly in the barony of Upper Third, but now in that of Desea without Drum, 4 miles south-east by south of Kilmacthomas, County Waterford, Munster. It contains the village of Kill, which sea length 3 miles, breadth 11, area 6,263 acres, 3 roods, 12 perches, population in 1831, 2,416, in 1841, 3,360. Houses 519, population of the rural districts in 1841, 3,022, houses 462. The general character of the land is coarse, pastoral, and boggy. The highest ground is on the north well near Dungarvan, Kilmacthomas, quite close. The highest ground is on the north border and has an altitude of 541 feet. Near the village of Kill is Garden Morris, the seat of John Power O'Shea, and nearer Waterford is Georgetown, the seat of James Barron, Esquire, Drumbrattin. At the termination of a tongue of the parish, which runs down to the coast, makes a slender claim to have been the landing place of the first English invaders, but supports its pretensions on the doubtful circumstances of its having a small mound with a circular entrenchment, and of its name having the signification of the fortification of the Britons. The parish itself takes its name from a church anciently built by St. Barameden. The land which belonged to this church, says the Reverend Mr. Ryland, has long been highly venerated by the common people, who attribute to its many surprising qualities. It is said that a notorious robber, whenever he passed through this place, used to wash his horse's hooves and legs in the first water which he chanced to meet, lest his haunt should be discovered in consequence of his being guilty of sacrilege in carrying away a portion of the holy clay. There is a well here sacred to St. Barameden, frequently resorted to by pilgrims who ascribe many virtues to its waters. Marina, a sister of this saint and equally esteemed for piety, also resided in this parish. A church, the ruins of which are still discernible, built by her near the sea, gives to the place the name of Kilmurrin. An image of this saint, rudely carved out of a rock, may be seen in a cave near Dunbrattin. The place is often resorted to by the neighbouring people. This parish is a vicarage and a separate benefice in the Diocese of Lismore. Visceral tithe composition £100, glebe 33 shillings, gross income £103 3 shillings, net £95 10 shillings. Patron the diocesan. The incumbent holds also the stipendiary curacy of Kill St Nicholas in the Diocese of Waterford. Kill it means hill, or yeah, I think it means hill. The curate of Monkland receives salary of £10 for performing the occasional duties of Kilberry Meaden. The rectorial tithes are compounded for £200 and are appropriated to the pre-censorship of Waterford Cathedral. The Roman Catholic chapel has an attendance of 2,000. Wow. In 1834, the Protestants amounted to 12 and the Roman Catholics to 2,386, and 2 paid daily schools. Paid daily, can you imagine paying to go to school each day? Wow. Maybe it doesn't mean that. Kilmeaden Castle, power 1600 plus. Kilmeaden is a parish partly in the barony of Upper Third, but chiefly in that of Middle Third, County Waterford, Munster. Length 4.5 miles, breadth 2 3/4, area of the Upper Third section 2,308 acres, 1 rood, 25 perches of the Middle Third section. 6,934 acres, population 8041 of the whole, 2,620 of the Middle Third section, 2,234. Houses in the whole, 411. In the Middle Third section, 356. The census states the population of 1831 at 2,135. The ecclesiastical authorities state it at 2,621. And the former places the whole parish in Middle Third. The surface is part of the south side of the valley of the Suir, and the land, though aggregately good, presents so wide a variety as to range in annual value between 5 shillings and 40 shillings per plantation acre. 2 of the highest grounds have altitudes of respectively 354 and 493 feet. The principal seats are Whitefield, Ballyduff, Mount Congreve, Woodvilla, Colfin, and Whitfield. The village of Kilmeaden stands on the road from Waterford to Carrick-on-Shore, 3 miles east-south-east of Port Law and 5 west of Waterford. Population 1831, 194. In 1841, not specially returned. The village and its neighbourhood were formerly places of some consequence, but a great baronial castle and various ancient private residences which adorned them have long since gone to decay. Kilmeaden Castle occupied an elevated and commanding site on the banks of the Suir, and was the residence of one of the branches of the noble family of Poer or Power, whose other branches had their chief residences at Curraghmore and Donisle, and who were descendants of Robert Poer, Marshal of King Henry II. Cromwell, when sweeping the south of Ireland, demolished Kilmeaden Castle. See, I don't understand this. If the Poers were Protestants gifted lands from previous invasions, why would Cromwell come after them? I don't know my Irish history very well. Cromwell, when sweeping the south of Ireland, demolished Kilmeaden Castle, hanged its proprietor on an adjacent tree, and parcelled out its lands amongst some illiterate individuals in his military train. The property extended from Kilmeaden to Tremor. It was soon sold by its ignorant grantees to a gentleman of the name of Ottrington, and it was partly colonised by the new proprietor with families from Ulster, whose descendants now figure as respectable gentry of the county. Elizabeth Viscountess Doneraile, granddaughter of Mr. Ottrington, erected to his memory a still extant tomb in the churchyard of Kilmeaden, and from her the extensive property purchased by her grandfather has descended to the Earl of Doneraile. At Fairbrook, on the lands of Cullener, is an extensive paper manufactory, which 20 years ago employed about 140 men, women and children. and on the same stream that works it, a stream which falls into the Suir at a little distance from Poldrew, are a bolting mill, a corn mill, and corn stores nearly on the site of a quondam extensive iron manufactory. This parish is a vicarage in the Diocese of Waterford. Visceral tithe composition £170, glebe 21. The rectorial tithes are compounded for £226, 4 shillings and threepence, and are appropriated to the members of Waterford chapter. The vicarages of Kilmeaden and Reesk, see that article, constitute the benefice of Kilmeaden. Population 1831, 3,592. Gross income £274, 5 shillings and sixpence. Net £251 and 18 shillings and 5 pence. Patron the diocesan. The incumbent holds also the benefice and prebend of Seskinen in the Diocese of Lismore. The church is an old building, sittings 100, attendance from 15 to 45. The Roman Catholic chapel has an attendance of 1,500. In 1834, the Protestants of the parish and union amounted to 121, the Roman Catholics of the parish to 2,532, and the Roman Catholics of the union to 3,300. 4 daily schools in the parish, one of which was salaried, with £5 from Lord Doneraile, £4 from 3 clergymen, and £8 from the Association for Discountenancing Vice. And one with £12 from subscription, and some advantages from other sources, had on their books 218 boys and 121 girls, and there was a daily school also in Risk. In 1842, national schools at Ballyduff were salaried with respectively £12 and £8, and had on their books 130. I love that. What was that called again? That Association for Discountenancing Vice. Port Law, Carrickmore House, Power 1700 plus, rebuilt by James Power, the 3rd Earl of Tyrone, Mr. Bence James, Guy to Barber. Visitation 2nd series, right, Power family since medieval times. 1855. Carrickmore House was where the Marquess of Waterford lived. It includes a much altered castle which was built by the Power family in the 12th century. Most of the house dates from 18th century alterations carried out by Sir Marcus Beresford when it came into his possession after his marriage to Lady Catherine Power. The front hall and the billiard room are the only parts of the original castle left, and they are on a different level than the rest of the house. The estate covers about 10 square miles, and in the gardens are some fine examples of bronze statues. I don't think I've been there. I'd like to go there. Power's Country, Power. Power's Country is a quondam territorial division of the county of Waterford, Munster. It comprehended most of the barony of Upper Third and part of the baronies of Middle Third and Dessy without Drum, and it had its name from the family of Poer or le Poer, the ancestors of the Marquess of Waterford. Tremor, Newtown House, Power 1750 plus, bought circa 1790 by Joseph Power. Newtown is a promontory in the parish of Drumcannon, barony of Middle Third, County Waterford, Munster. It screens the west side of the entrance of Tremor Bay and has an altitude of 147 feet above sea level. I bet that's beautiful. To direct the navigation of the adjacent dangerous coast, 3 towers have been erected on this promontory, while 2 have been erected on Brownstown Head at the east side of the entrance of Tremor Bay. The coast of the perilous bay, all the way round between these headlands, a distance of about 3 miles, is sheer beach upon a dead level. Between Newtown Head and the town of Tremor is Newtown House, which was the seat of Edward O'Neill Power, Esquire. Wardford Balnakill House, Dobbin Power 1700 plus, remodeled circa 1770, Originally, the Dobbin family sold to Nicholas Power in 1788. Yeah, and that's the same reference. Waterford, Ballycanvan House. Bolton Power, 1750 plus. The Boltons moved to Faithleg. And then Waterford, Faithleg House, Bolton Power, 1783. Built by Cornelius Bolton MP, bought by the Power family in 1819. Houses, London, yeah, visitation, yeah. Owned in 1790 by Reverend Hugh Bolton, Dean of Waterford. John Bolton, acquired by Nicholas Power MP, circa 1830. In 1783, the present Faithleg House was built by Cornelius Bolton, who had inherited the Faithleg estate from his father in 1779. Financial difficulties followed, and in 1819, the Bolton family sold the house to the Power family. Nicholas Mahon Power married Margaret Mahon, and her dowry enabled him to buy Faithleg House and estate. The Powers were a wealthy merchant family from Waterford City, and they adorned the estate with the stag's head and cross, which was the Power family crest. Interesting. It remains the emblem of Faithleg to this day. Stag's head and cross. I ought to write that down because I've seen different variations on the family crest. Yeah, on the death of Nicholas Power in 1873. Sorry, I hope you can tell I'm reading this. I have read this years ago, but it's like reading it for the first time again. His eldest son, Patrick Joseph, Pat, and his wife, Lady Olivia Nugent, came to live in the house and commissioned Samuel Roberts to alter and enlarge the family mansion. I've forgotten. Sorry. Put the stag's head and cross. Cross. Coat of arms. Crest, yeah, crest. Different coat of arms and crest, yeah. Okay, yeah, so the Power family also built the nearby Faithleg Catholic Church on the ground where Faithleg Castle originally stood. You see, it's mixing in, which is nice, really. You know, like I said, Jesus didn't leave denominations behind. The house passed to Hubert Power, the only son of Pat and Lady Olivia, and in 1920, upon Hubert's death, it passed to his daughter, Ellie Power. Ely Power, E-I-L-Y, might be short for Ailish. In 1935, Ailey and her husband sold the house to the De La Salle Order of Teaching Christian Brothers, after which it acted as a novitiate until the 1980s. Oh my goodness. The last remaining gap in history is from the 1980s until 1998, when it was taken over by the Tower Hotel Group. Anyway, I suppose that's one way for the public to enjoy. Waterford Gertine Power. The last of the line to reside there was Edmund Robert de la Poer, 3rd Count de la Poer and de Jure, 20th Baron Le Power and Corrick Moor. He sold the castle on the 12th of April 1979, but remained in residence in part of it until he died on the 20th of November 1995. Wow. The beautiful demesne of Mr. Power on the north border of the barony of Upper Third and of County Waterford, Munster. It is situated on the right bank of the shore, 5 miles east of Clonmel. A magnificent mansion was a number of years ago projected, but only the stables were completed. And they are very extensive. Get your priorities right, build the stables and have a castellated appearance. A broad band of low ground immediately flanking the river forms a charming contrast to thickly wooded hills which rise abruptly above it, and a deep ravine almost hid beneath its profuse ringlets and tresses of timber, possesses singular beauty. In the demesne is a cromlech, which consists of 5 irregularly placed upright stones and a superincumbent stone of somewhat larger size, but wanting the flatness and peculiar position of some of the more perfect of these works. Listen to this on a driving journey. Go tour the powerhouses. Waterford, Snow Hill, Snow Power 1765. Built by the Snows, overlooking Waterford Harbour on the Kilkenny side. The Powers renamed it Power Hall. County Wexford, Enniscorthy, Eadamine House, Power 1839. Built by the Powers. Dublin Distillers. Eadamine House is situated on the east bank of the River Slaney and a mysterious-looking round tower on the west bank. Eadamine House was the residence of the Power family who were associated with the distilling business Power's Whisky. They recruited most of their workers from nearby Oilgate, where a terrace of houses built by the Powers for their workers can still be seen today. The Powers also built a private chapel built at Eadamine to the design of the famous architect A.W. Pugin. County Wicklow, Enniskerry, Powers Court, Wingfield 1731 plus. Built by Richard Wingfield MP, the first Viscount Powers Court, owned by Lord Powers Court, F.O. Morris. Series of Picturesque Views, Volume 3. Disastrous fire, 1974. Ruined. Yeah, it happened to a lot of the houses. Based on a 13th century castle, Powers Court was remodeled in the 18th century when owned by Sir Richard Wingfield, who created the magnificent mansions surrounding grounds in the decade after 1731. Further alterations were undertaken a century later for the 6th Viscount Powers Court by Daniel Robertson, who's said to have suffered severely from gout and directed operations from a wheelbarrow fortified by a bottle of sherry. When the bottle was finished, work ceased for the day. The 7th Viscount completed the work in the late 1850s, using his own and other designers' plans to finish the terraces and planting thousands of trees, whilst installing much statuary, ironwork, and decorative items. Oh dear. 18th century Le Poer notes. The following information is extracted from some 18th century notes on the Le Poer family of Carrickmore, the Walshes of Piltown, and the Walshes of the Island County Waterford. From the papers of V. Hussey Walsh, Esquire, edited by the Reverend W.M. Carrigan, DDPD, MWIA. The Honourable Councillor Beresford, in looking over, I presume this is quoting, the Honourable Councillor Beresford, in looking over and adjusting the pedigree of his mother's family, should take notice that when Fitzgibbons, the White Knight, got Lord Power murdered at Kildy Grange by Darby Bryan, called Dermot Otu, one of the executioners of the tyranny of that night, he left no son then born. At the time of this murder, the Lady Power of Carrickmore, daughter to Lord Buttermont, now Barrymore, had not a son, but was pregnant of a son, who was the direct ancestor of Lady Tyrone and the illustrious family of Barons of Carrickmore, since Earls of Tyrone, and of us who since by our grandmothers descended from the Lord John Power, who died lunatic about 1640, in which pedigree from that time to this period there can be no mistake as I set it down, though Mr. Lodge in his peerage and in his marginal notes the late Lord Tyrone's pedigree was greatly misinformed in part of what he mentions of ye Carrickmore family. Black Tom Butler, Earl of Ormond, taking an advantage of the want of a son at Carrickmore, married his niece, a butler, to a Le Power, who for want of a son pretended by blood to the inheritance of Carrickmore and founded the family of Gertine. It's all the family scandal, the skeletons that people find when they research. It's funny. Gosh, the intrigue here. Yeah. But the Lady Dowager, after the murder of her husband being delivered of a son ever since, has dispelled such pretensions, and she was herself married soon after to the said Earl of Ormond at Carrick. To trace the family further up, we should inspect into Camden's History of Ireland, or his Britannia, with the Annals of Ireland annexed to it, as well as Geraldus Carnbrensis, an old historian who came with us on the conquest under Henry II, the disputes between the houses of York and Lancaster, the tyranny of the Brehon law adhered to even by the greatest of the English conquerors, through the history of Ireland, otherwise ill attended to, into great confusion, that Val Walsh, who is descended from this family by his grandmother Ellen Power, sister to Richard, Earl of Tyrone, thinks we should rest on what may be depended on since the murder of said lord and the death of Lord Le Poer, who died lunatic about 1640, on which this may be depended on without any doubt. Pierce, brother to Richard, created John Lord Le Poer. Earl, married to a lady of the Burkes, daughter of Lord Brutus, and had an only daughter by her called Ruth, and not Judith, mother to James Ducat. And after his death, married to McCarthy, or in Kerry, he never had a right to be styled of Rothcormac, that being a separate family since the conquest, so that Mr. Lodge in his period should have said, which Pierce founded Mr. Ducat's family at Whitestown in said county. I suppose what led Mr. Lodge to say that said Pierce Le Power founded the family of Rothcormac was that sometime before his marriage with Lord Brutus's daughter Eleanor Burke, daughter to MacWalter, Burke, likewise of the clan Rickford family, was married to Power of Rothcormac, who by the great interest of her family preserved her dower, now the only remaining part of that estate being undoubtedly a branch of the family of Dunhill and Kilmeaden. Oh, dear. Ellen Le Poer, eldest daughter of John Lord Le Poer and sister to Richard, Earl of Tyrone, by her prudent conduct was considered the preserver of her father's life and estate, having obtained from Ireton a promise in honour when he and other officers dined at Carrickmore under the usurper to take no advantage of her father's weakness in discourse, which promise that general exactly supported. The aforesaid Ellen Le Poer was married to Thomas Walsh of Piltown in the county of Waterford, and was mother of John Walsh, blown up with many other gentlemen of fortune in the Cove of Cork, to whom succeeded his brother Colonel Robert Walsh the elder. Notes on the foregoings. Some of this is fascinating, and some of it's just information, but look. By Count de la Poer. In the account of the Le Poers of Carrickmore given in the Hussey Walsh papers, there are several mistakes. It was not Lord Power, Richard IV Baron, who was killed by the Fitzgibbons, but his eldest son, John Oge, who was so killed during the lifetime of his father, who died in 1607, his son, John Oge, having been killed before December 1600. Shortly after John's death, his wife, Helen Barry, daughter of David Viscount of Buttermont, gave birth to a son, John, who succeeded his grandfather as the 5th Baron, and also died a lunatic in 1661, not about 1640. Who writes that on a death certificate, died a lunatic, for goodness sake? Richard IV Baron, mind you, some of the intermarrying can cause that. You see that in aristocracy and royal families. Richard IV Baron, who died in 1607, left issue, besides John Oge, killed by the Fitzgibbons, 3 younger sons, viz. Piers of Moonalagi, Moonalagi, now called Munsborough. What a funny name, Moonalagi. Thomas and Edmund. The male line of peers of Moonalagi existed until the year 1742, when it ended on the death of Henry Power, whose father, Colonel John Power, would, as heir male, but for his attainder, have been 9th Baron, after the death in 1704 of James Power, third and last Earl of Tyrone, whose daughter and heiress, Lady Catherine Power, married Sir Marcus Beresford in 1717. No member of the Gertine line married a niece of Black Tom, Earl of Ormond. Neither did nor could they, at the period mentioned, have put forward any claim to the inheritance of Corrickmore, for the very good reason that, failing the male issue of John Ogue, killed by the Fitzgibbons, the next in succession would have been the Moonalagi line, already referred to, which existed down to 1742. Ruth, daughter and heiress of Piers Power of Killowen, married Thomas Duckett. This Piers Power, whose will is dated 1st of March 1668, was one of the younger sons of John the 5th Baron. It was Catherine Power, sister of Richard, 1st Earl of Tyrone, and not her sister Ellen, who had the guardianship of her father, the 5th Baron. This Catherine married Sir John Fitzgerald of Dromina, Lord of the Decies. The Gertine line descend from Piers Power, who died in 1597, and who was the second son of John Moore, the 3rd Baron. Very hot. See letters from Lord Barry and Sir George Carew to Cecil. California State Papers, Ireland. Sir Piers Power of Corrickmore. The following article is reprinted from the Waterford County Library. It was written by Count E. de la Poer, Sir Piers Power of Corrickmore, 2nd Lord Le Poer in Corrickmore, by Count E. de la Poer, HML Vice President. On the 13th of September 1535, Sir Richard Power of Corrickmore, KT, was that Kintail, was for his services in the wars in Ireland created Baron of Le Poer and Corrickmore, with remainder to the heir male of his body forever. And on the 10th of November following, he was killed by the traitor Owen O'Callaghan, Lord Le Poer. He was killed by the traitor Owen O'Callaghan. Lord Le Poer, by his wife Catherine Butler, second daughter of Piers, 8th Earl of Ormond, left issue 3 sons and 3 daughters, namely Piers, his heir, John, heir to his brother, Thomas Power of Coolfin, Catherine, wife of Sir Nicholas Devereux of Balnagear, Elise married to Sir Thomas Fitzgerald of Connaught, and another daughter married to Teague MacBrien Arra. Piers Power, the second Lord Le Poer or Power, was born in the year 1522, and being under age at the time of his father's death, he became the king's ward. Later, his wardship was granted to his uncle, James, Earl of Ormond. During the second Lord's minority, a large part of the county of Waterford was despotically ruled by his mother, and an account of her proceedings is to be found in the presentments of the jurors of the county and city of Waterford, AD 1537. Among the latter presentments is the following: that Lady Le Poer hath taken and exacted of the king's people, for the furnishing and sending forth of her son Piers Power into England in company with the Lord Treasurer, a certain sum of money, the certainty amount whereof they know not. The Lord Treasurer referred to was James Butler, 9th Earl of Ormond, Lord Le Poer's uncle and guardian. So it seems like the boy was too young to inherit, and the wicked mother and the wicked uncle, who she was probably having an affair with, were scurrilous. In 1541, a parliament was held in Dublin, and although underage, Lord Le Poer took his seat, ranking immediately above the Baron of Dunboyne. And the Thursday being Corpus Christi Day, after a solemn mass of the Holy Ghost, the peers resorted to the Parliament chamber when the Commons presented to us their Speaker, one Sir Thomas Cusack, who made a right good proposition in laud and praise of your Majesty, most worthily deserved, and also declared what benefit came of obedience to princes and observing of laws, which after being answered by your Grace's Chancellor in English and by the Earl of Ormond declared in Irish, much contented the said Lords and Commons. In 1542, Lord Le Poer's financial position was undoubtedly in a bad way. He's probably been robbed by his mother and uncle. For in this year, his uncle, Lord Ormond, applied to the council for a license to allow his nephew to go over to England, setting forth that, in consideration of his youth and having little to live by, he should have license to repair to the King's Majesty, there to continue for a year or two, and to be admitted as a pensioner to attend upon his Highness. He, however, does not appear then to have gone to England, though he did so later on in command of a body of Irish soldiers, known as kerns, to assist Henry VIII against the French. Writing in the year 1544 to the King on the question of sending over auxiliaries, the Lord Justice and Council say that the kern made strange to go because there was no nobleman of this realm to whom they might trust their relief in their necessities appointed to conduct them, so they weren't getting any wages. Your Highness willed us to appoint such one of the noblemen that your Majesty did write to for provision of kern, as we should think meet, to have the conduct the whole number and upon consultation, considering that none of us Irish lords were meet for that purpose. None of the Irish lords were meet for that purpose. And yet conveyance to send any of the earls or others of the nobility of the Englishry, being unwieldy men, for to go with light kern. Finally, we had no choice, but either the Lord of Dumboyne or the Lord Power, and accordingly have appointed the said Lord Power, which ye are toward and an hardy young gentleman, being very desirous to serve your Highness, to have the general conduct of them all under your Majesty, or such other as it shall please your Grace to appoint. We have limited to him no entertainment, but referred him to your Majesty's most gracious order and liberality. It's like Chaucerian English. It may further please your Majesty that within this realm every two kern used to have a page or boy, which commonly ye nevertheless a man, to bear their mantles, weapons, and victuals for 2, 3, or 4 days when they go in a violent journey, for whom another shares of the marshals, pipers, surgeons, and such like, according to their usage, they receive like entertainment as for themselves. Yet contrary their said usage, because we think that in your Majesty's standing wars they shall be otherwise provided for, then they can be here. We have willed them to have for every 4 kern but a page or boy, so as 800 kern have 200 boys, which here is accompanied by the name and an interment for 1,000 kern. I think they're looking for servants to travel with. All arrangements having been finally made and accompanied by one of the Sherlocks of the county of Waterford, Lord Le Poer, in command of 700 kern, crossed over to England, where after having been reviewed in London, they were sent over to France, where they served as irregulars and plundered all the adjacent country. Their manner of collecting cattle was by tying a bull to a stake, and scorching him with faggots in order to force him to bellow, which gathered all the neighbouring cows about, oh my goodness, about him, by which artifice they were taken and carried to the camp. Whenever they met with a Frenchman, they always cut off his head, refusing him both quarter and ransom. The French, by this strange kind of making war, being astonished, sent a trumpeter to the king, Henry VIII, to learn whether he'd brought men with him or devils that could neither be won with rewards or compassion, which the king, turning into a jest, several of the Irish who straggled from their companions and fell into the enemy's hands were afterwards used very cruelly and put to great tortures before they were slain. On the 30th of September 1544, Lord Le Poer was clubbed a knight, and during the siege of Boulogne was severely wounded. He was brought to Calais, where he died on the 10th or 16th of October 1544. Sir William Wyse writes 5th of January 1545 that the Lord Poer having died, the Earl of Ormond and his sister Lady Catherine, Lord Power's mother, will be at Motel beside Curraghmore, where they intend an obseque for Lord Power's soul, where much devotion of meat and drink is prepared. The poor people are like to sing requiescent in pace, but the more they cry, the more sorrow increaseth. If we used to have wailers at, funerals. As Lord Le Poer died unmarried, he was succeeded by his next brother, John, known as Shane Moore, who then became the third Baron. Lord Le Poer's mother married secondly James Fitzgerald, the 15th Earl of Desmond, and dying on the 17th of March 1552, was buried in the Abbey of Askeaton in the county of Limerick. State Papers, Kern written for by the King's Majesty. Kern sent at that number. These are the people that were sent to fight for the King in France from Ireland. Piers Butler, Earl of Ormond, for 100 to 200. James Fitzgerald, Earl of Desmond, for 100 to 120. Maura O'Brien, Earl of Thomond, for 100 or 90. The Baron of Ibracon for 50. Thomas Butler, Baron of Cahir, for 24 to 30. Butler, Baron of Dunboyne, for 24, 16. Piers Power, Baron of Curraghmore, for 24 to 34. James Fleming, Baron of Slane, 24, 36. Sir Gerald Fitzgerald of Dromina, for 24, 24. O'Reilly for 189. O'Connor for 50, 38. O'Carroll for 50. O'Moore for 50. Maguire for 100. O'Rourke for 100. O'Mulmoy for 100. O'McLaughlin for 24. McGuinness for 50. Cahir MacArthur Kavanagh for 24, 21. The Powers' mottos. Nothing except by the cross. You see, the Knights Templar and so on, Crusaders, the cross was, like the Rosicrucians and so on, but they weren't really acting in a godly way in some ways. In some ways, they appeared to be, but there's a very strong chance they were practicing satanic, Luciferian rituals and rites. Okay, through the cross to the crown, i.e. through suffering to victory. I'll write that down. Suffering to victory. For my country always, Bartholomew de la Poer, Lord of Blackburgh, male, Father Drogo de Poer, married to Eleanor, Robert de la Poer, Roger de la Poer, William de la Poer, Simon de la Poer, Philip de la Poer. There we are. And that's at the end of part 2. There are 2 more parts. See, you get, this is all the spam. They're just trying to get, would you mind if I share your blog on my Facebook group? No, of course you can. I should have replied to that one. There's a lot of people that I think would really appreciate your content. Please let you know. Queenie Fillmore. No. Queenie Fillmore. And if you happen to watch this, Queenie, of course you can share it and ignore the trolls if they try and contact. Oh, I did ask. Go ahead. Oh gosh, I must have been paranoid already by then. I was recommended this by means of my cousin. I'm not certain whether this put up is written through him. Has no one else realised such exact approximately my difficulty? You're incredible. Thanks. Alejandro Betita. Is written through him. This is a message as traced by Mary Frances. Your website is missing out on at least. Well, that's just. Do you mind if I quote a couple of your X videos on my blog as long as I credit and sources back to your website? Oh, X video. My blog site is in the exact same niche as yours. Oh gosh, and I said no problem, go ahead. I probably didn't see that it says X video at the top. Oh well, that's the end of that. Thank you for listening, for those that made it to the end. And sorry for the wobbly beginning and the reading style. Very relaxed, but hey, nobody else is doing it, so that's the best I can do. AngelaSCashes.org or Angela Power Disney on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks and God bless.